Good morning. We'll go ahead and get started. A very warm welcome to you to the first panel of the symposium titled The Long-Term Impacts of Pandemics, Ongoing Disruptions to Societies, Families, and the Economy. My name is Dr. Jessica Howell. I'm an Associate Professor of English here at Texas A&M University, and also Associate Director of the Glasscock Center for Humanities Research, where I convene the Global Health Humanities Initiative. Some of you may have heard of the health humanities, but if not, I can briefly say that this is a growing interdisciplinary field that uses methods drawn from the humanities and humanistic social sciences to understand the lived experience of illness and healing. Global health humanities may use medical history, the study of narrative or people's stories, and ethical considerations about health equity and health access, just as a few examples, to enter into conversations and collaborations concerned with issues of urgent importance regarding global health. If you're interested in learning more, please visit the initiative website, which I will be putting right now in the chat function, to learn more or contact me directly. So on to today's events. We have been very happy to partner with the Scowcroft Institute of International Affairs in organizing and hosting today's symposium, specifically Dr. Leslie Rule, Associate Research Scientist and the Institute's Assistant Director. Dr. Rule is a conservation ecologist who collaborates with a team from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and their work together seeds the first panel today from 10 to 11:15. We also thank the financial sponsor of today's event, the T3 grant in Global Health Humanities from the President's Excellence Fund. For this grant, I, Professor Violet Showers-Johnson from the History Department, and Dr. Laura Daig from the Bush School of Government and Public Service, have been collecting and analyzing oral histories by those who have firsthand experience with the Ebola epidemic. This project seeds the conversation during the second panel today from 11:45 to 1. And finally, after a 2-hour break, we will reconvene at 3 p.m. for the keynote address by Professor Greg Mittman. Professor Mittman is the Vilas Research and William Coleman Professor of History, Medical History, and Environmental Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. His talk is entitled Viral Exchanges, the Shifting Geopolitics of Ebola and COVID-19. We hope you can join us for all of these events or only one or two as your schedule allows. You'll have received a unique link for each event when you registered. So I'll give just a few remarks on today's symposium theme. When I was introduced to Dr. Rule in late January 2020, and we began discussing the possibilities of a collaborative event, I most definitely did not anticipate the way in which this topic that we came up with, that is the ongoing effects of epidemics and pandemics, would be so acutely relevant to us now in 2021. We since decided that it was important to use the conversations today to make connections between the Ebola epidemic of 2014, which both our projects study and engage, and our current moment during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, these connections, where they exist, are meant to be productive rather than reductive. Of course, historical, cultural, geographical, and medical contexts vary widely. However, by focusing on individual and local experiences, we have the possibility, I think, to address important larger questions that cut across both epidemics. Questions such as what social disruptions to individuals, society, and economies occur during and after epidemics, especially those that might not be as widely publicized or known. Or further, what happens after international attention and aid leave affected communities. Perhaps we may also be inspired to ask and discuss such questions as what is the creation of art, such as film, or the creation of stories? Why is that a significant act during and after an epidemic? How do people use these forms of creative expression to make sense of the ever-changing social and medical landscape? So we look forward to your contributions to these conversations during a substantial Q&A period that we've reserved following each panel's presentation. Finally, I'd like to thank the Glasscock and Scowcroft staff for their help in organizing and publicizing and tech hosting today's events, specifically Shannon Gozenbach, the Global Health Humanities Graduate Research Assistant, Amanda Duchek, Brittany Sporenhauer, and Laura Zazuchek. Also, thanks to the Department of the English staff. Finally, a special thanks to our panel chairs, Leslie Rule and Violet Showers-Johnson, for organizing and facilitating these rich panels. So before turning over to Dr. Rule, I'll remind us of some of the webinar functions. You'll have already seen that come up in your chat box as well. We are recording today. If you wish to view the webinar using closed captioning or subtitles, please select the CC or live transcript option on the bottom of your Zoom window. You can then adjust those settings and sizes as you prefer. And finally, as I mentioned, we're hosting a Q&A session at the end of each panel or talk facilitated by the event's chair. Feel free to ask any questions you'd like to ask our speakers in this Q&A period directly in the Q&A window. If you see a question that someone else has posted that you want to see addressed in particular, feel free to uptick or like it so we know it's a question multiple people are interested in. So without further ado, thanks again for joining us, and I'd like to turn over now to our first panel chair, Dr. Leslie Rule.
Thank you very much. So welcome. Thank you so much to everyone who is joining us today. Again, my name is Leslie Rule. I'm the Assistant Director at the Scowcroft Institute of International Affairs. And this is where we also house the Pandemic and Biosecurity Program as part of the Bush School and Government of Public Service here at Texas A&M. I just wanted to give you a little background on the genesis of this panel. My first visit to the Democratic Republic of Congo was to Goma, which is in Eastern Congo, in 2000, while I was still a Peace Corps volunteer serving in West Africa. The culture, music, art, environment, and the energy of the place really drew me in. And I've been working in the region in some capacity since that time. At around 2015, I began working on a project with colleagues called Wakisha, which means ignite in Swahili. Our program is focused on the EC3 concept of how entrepreneurship is best supported in a region of conflict. This is a region where there's hundreds of rebel groups, there's been civil war, and there's still spillover effects from the Rwandan genocide. There's limited connectivity, there's very few paved roads, there's limited electricity. And then it's a region of conservation concern. Beni is located next to the border of Virunga National Park, which is a World Heritage Site famous for mountain gorillas, the Ruwenzori Mountains, which are sometimes referred to as mountains of the moon, that has glaciers, and there's active volcanoes. During June and July of 2018, I was there hosting a leopard's lair, which is a bit like Shark Tank, but it's Congo style. And I was meeting with our colleagues and entrepreneurs. So in August of 2018, right after I left to come back to Texas and teach, what was to be the world's second largest Ebola outbreak was declared in the region I had just left. I was very worried about my friends and colleagues, and I kept in close contact with them. The outbreak has lasted about 2 years, and the response was exacerbated by conflict, distrust, and poor infrastructure that I mentioned before that we had with our entrepreneurship program. Ebola took the lives of more than 2,200 people, and it has about a 66% mortality rate. That means if you get the disease, you have a 66% chance of dying from Ebola. And while the outbreak was officially declared over in 2020, there's been a small resurgence this month, both in DR Congo and in Guinea. An Ebola vaccination campaign was started in Congo about 2 weeks ago. Now, the narratives we hear about the public response to infectious disease with pandemic potential are not really new or unique. Doubt, suspicion, distrust, and fear are very human emotions. This pertains both to a disease we don't know everything about, as well as the response and interventions meant to fight the disease. The trauma people experience is real and it's layered, and it doesn't always come in the form you may expect. After hearing so many stories about the difficulties my friends and colleagues were experiencing, from response work to intervention complications to personal tragedy, I received funding from Texas A&M School of Innovation grant on a boom and bust economics of Ebola project to better understand some of these unintended consequences and outcomes. I had the pleasure of leading a fabulous group of students who were able to interview various colleagues and friends of mine in Congo who were experiencing the disease in much more nuanced ways than we heard on the news. Ironically, our summer trip to Rwanda to meet some of the people we had spoken with was canceled due to the current pandemic, which proved less lethal, but harder to contain than Ebola, as we all know, COVID-19. But the lens through which my students saw COVID was different from many of their peers. since they've been looking at some of the impacts of the response, as well as speaking with people living through the Ebola outbreak. The impact and understanding of my students is one of the reasons we wanted to share these stories with you today. We wanted to provide a platform so you can hear from the people who have actually been dealing with the Ebola outbreak in the Eastern Congo and have you draw your own lessons learned and conclusions. So our panelists today are all Congolese who live in the Beni area of Eastern DRC. So please bear with us as connections and electricity are not always guaranteed, but I'm really excited about the people we've brought to share their stories with you. And remember, this is just a small piece of the overall narrative. So let me introduce our panel to you. I really want to thank the IT team on the Congo side for coordinating. And if the camera is working, that will be great. We can see everyone. And the people that we will be watching on a video that we've produced, a 7-minute video so we can tell the story, are these folks right here. First of all, we have Dr. Maurice Kakule Mutsunga. Dr. Maurice completed his medical training from the University of Kisangani in 2011. From 2012 to 2018, he was involved in the treatment of the very first Ebola cases to occur in Beni territory. He contracted the Ebola virus, but he has recovered. In September of 2018, he joined the National Ebola Response Team and played a critical role working at an Ebola treatment center, an ETC, which you'll see in the video. Today, he works as the World Health Organization point person in charge of monitoring health programs and ensuring that necessary continued medical testing occurs for Ebola survivors across the country. We will also hear from Mama Marie-Jeanne Casuera. Mama Marie-Jeanne and her husband were small-scale farmers in a rural and remote area outside of Beni, where both she and her husband contracted Ebola. Sadly, her husband and many members of her family and community died from the disease. She is a survivor. She's also the mother of 9 children, 2 who have passed away, and the youngest has just graduated from high school. She has received trauma healing services through the Bethesda Counseling Center in 2019. And in 2020, she initiated a small business of selling fresh cassava in the local market to help provide for the needs of her family. Our third panelist is Mr. Taishike Mukekake. In 2018, Taishike participated in a short emergency training by the Red Cross and worked as a member of the Safe and Dignified Burials team. This work centered around making sure that deceased Ebola victims were properly buried by medical standards without the bodies coming in contact with other people. This was a very difficult job because it went against the culture of traditional burial practices. Loved ones were not allowed to grieve their deceased family members the way they had done for generations, and their anger and misunderstanding was often taken out on these public servants. Taishike describes his work as his way of serving his community. And then finally, we have my dear friend, Mr. Noe Kasali. Noe received his master's degree in counseling from Wheaton College in 2014. And wanting to serve his country, he founded the Bethesda Counseling Center in Beni, which is dedicated to serve children, adults, and families dealing with trauma-related issues. He conducts various seminars and trainings for community leaders and nonprofit organizations in the area of forgiveness, domestic and child abuse, trauma and compassion fatigue, and self-care. He's also a lecturer at the Christian Bilingual University of Congo in Beni, and he and his wife have 4 little girls. So Noe is a friend of mine who's been incredibly inspirational to me, both as a friend, as I see him interact with his family, and as a community member who cares deeply about public service. His own experiences with loss and experiences of conflict have influenced his work and career direction. His deep caring about his family and community helped him create the Bethesda Counseling Center. And when Jessica came to me about creating this conference, I knew that Noe and the story he had would be an excellent way to share with the world more of what is happening in DR Congo. So English is not the first language of our panelists. It's usually in French or Swahili. So we have a translator on the Congo side. And our IT content will help us maintain that connection. And just to make the story a bit easier for you to understand, we have a 7-minute video with subtitles that we will show after an introduction by my good friend Noe. And finally, we really want to make our panel as interactive as possible. We have Congo online, we have people from around the world. And what we would like to do is if you feel words of inspiration or something that is strikes you, please share that word in the chat box with us, as well as any questions you may have for any of the panelists. We will try to get your answers or your questions answered and summarize the inspirational words and share them at our conclusion. And with that, I am very pleased to pass the speaking baton to Mr. Noe Kasali.
Thank you, Dr. Leslie, for this floor, and thank you again for the invitation. And I would like to address, to send my word of thanks to Mama Marie Jean Kaswera. I will speak in Swahili so she hears me well. Mama, karibu sana, nashukuru sana wewe kukuwa hapo. Asante kukuja na kwa kujibu kwa waliko yetu. And tunaongea tu juu ya hiyo mambo yenyewe iliweza kutugusa na wandugu wanataka pia kuwahudumia na kusikia pia hiyo maadizi. Hiyo tunashukuru sana. So I was just saying thank you for Mami for just let her know how much we value her presence and also the rest of the panelists over there. So this is a very important topic, social impact of Ebola and the case of Democratic Republic of Congo, which is my country. My presentation will have 4 sections. Firstly, I will paint the context. Secondly, I will talk about Bethesda Counseling Center intervention and case study. And thirdly, we will listen to the short story video that Dr. Leslie just described, which presents the stories of frontline workers and survivors. And finally, I will give a brief conclusion. I would like to begin first by telling a short story of Kasongo Gregoire. In 2019, Gregoire lost his wife and his youngest daughter to the Ebola virus. He also contracted the virus, and by grace, he survived the virus. However, his grief was complicated even more by the social rejection he experienced. Gregoire said this: "After I lost my wife, everyone was afraid to come to my place, even for a simple greeting or to share a word of condolences, which I needed very much. The new name of my house became the house of Ebola." I'll come back to the story at the end of my presentation. But as Dr. Leslie said this, the world's second largest Ebola outbreak was declared in the region of Beni, which is the eastern side of Congo, in 2018. And it was in June of last year, actually, when we celebrated the end of this outbreak that took away the lives of more than 2,000 people. And according to International Rescue Committee, the number of people who died represented about 66% of those who contracted the virus. And fortunately, there was a vaccine that came in and it helped to flatten the curve. Unfortunately, a crisis like this reminds us over and over that men and women are not always impacted in the same way. We saw in this Ebola outbreak that the death of women were higher due primarily to their roles in providing care for sick people, both in their families and as health workers. In addition to this increased number of women who contracted and died, there are women who managed to survive the virus only to have their husbands leave them due to the stigma and fear around Ebola. We will come back to this later. What is unfortunate and terrible for this part of Eastern Congo, as Dr. Leslie said it too, is that this region is still experiencing serious conflict and a lack of peace from different rebel groups under various reasons. Many of you may have heard about the attack last week on a World Food Program vehicle, which killed the Italian ambassador, his guard, and the driver. We mourn this terrible loss. The armed men did this just 25 kilometers north of the town of Goma in Eastern Congo. So this is the place that fought the Ebola virus for over 2 years. And this is a place that has not fought the other virus of the insecurity, the need for peace that is still unaddressed. The question we are left with here is this: how can families and communities be rebuilt again? Can a community-focused life be restored again after being deeply fragmented by violence, Ebola, and COVID-19? Maybe the most important question here is this: what will happen given that the healthcare system is poor, under-equipped, and all the funding and assistance needed from international donors and NGOs is gone? And unfortunately, as we are talking right now, Ebola has resurfaced in the region of Lubero in Eastern Congo again. And so far, there are about 6 positive cases and 4 deaths already reported. And about 200 people have been traced and being monitored. Friends, the whole region again is under a state of alert. My region. And Kate Moger, the regional vice president of the Great Lakes at the International Rescue Committee, recently stated the following: another outbreak in North Kivu is a disaster. We cannot stress enough how difficult this will be for the people living in the province. They have faced decades of violence by armed groups and have now, between Ebola and COVID-19, been faced with disease outbreaks for almost 3 straight years. These communities are still trying to rebuild from the impact the last Ebola outbreak had on their health systems, as well as the emotional trauma from an increase in violence, particularly against women, all whilst fighting COVID-19, the end of the quote. But there is hope. There's hope that this new Ebola outbreak will be contained fast and quickly, given the knowledge the community has acquired, also the lessons we have learned from the previous outbreaks. So during all the previous outbreaks, we all know that the World Health Organization, with all of other international partners, come in to help. I remember just seeing all the amazing logistics of World, like Red Cross and Samaritan Purse and World Vision, UNICEF, and so forth, Médecins Sans Frontières. They did an amazing job in this very difficult space and place and region. And we salute their effort and their various sacrifices to end the virus in the region of North Kivu and Ituri. So let me talk about Bethesda Counseling Center intervention and a case study. During the Ebola outbreak, Bethesda Counseling Center intervened, not as a part of the government-led Ebola response. Rather, Bethesda came in as an already existing local mental health and psychosocial service to serve families overwhelmed by grief. This is what we focus on. Therefore, all that I'm presenting here is a small portion of what we did as Bethesda Counseling Center and should only be viewed from this lens. So during the outbreak, Bethesda identified a gap in support to grieving families. Often families were left behind, overwhelmed by their grief. And friends, I would like us to get this here. Ebola denies families and communities the chance and the opportunity to say goodbye to their loved ones. And all the protocols and guidelines related to safe burials and so forth, these protocols don't matter to people who are grieving. And I will even say this, the heart that is grieving does not listen to protocols. That was very critical to define even the way people reacted. One family responded like this: how can you take someone's father and bury him without the rest of the family around? In many African traditions, and it is believed that if you don't pay love and respect to those who are deceased, a ghost may hunt you. It's a belief. Another family in our program reported this. In our culture, dead people are not buried after 6 p.m., but Ebola workers are burying us after 6 p.m. Culturally speaking, nighttime and 6 p.m. here is even considered night, is viewed as a time when bad things can happen. Knowing that a family member was buried at night communicated a disrespect to the deceased and even caused dishonor by burying him or her in an inappropriate time. And this is my culture. I love my culture. I love my people. I love my community. And we have a special, a unique way we respond to death in my community. Families and communities gather together, and sometimes most of the time, families will wash the body of the dead person, and the community and the family will gather to respect and honor the dead person. How we do that? We will all gather and we will come together, and people will show up and visit to the grieving family. The family and the community hold an overnight, prayer and music and songs and a vigil with the body there present. The body there present. But Ebola, as I said, denied us of these very important rituals. Thus, families who lost loved ones felt abandoned by their own communities and friends. This was painful and disturbing in a time that was already full of sorrow. So Bethesda Counseling Center took one step back and designed a grief group process in which we invited grieving families to participate. And I'm glad Mama is there. Mama also was part of those who participated in this program. During this process, each group of 10 members met with our team, where they spent time together sharing some of the stories and memories of those who passed away, and families grieved together and lamented over so many questions and unknowns about Ebola. They also learned healthy coping mechanisms, breathing and relaxation, things like that, sharing with one another our burdens. Through this process, they discovered that they were in fact not alone. They found a community. At the end of this empathetic process, families, and this was very powerful, families wrote letters of goodbyes, goodbye to their loved ones. They expressed the words of goodbye to their loved ones. Participants also planted trees to symbolize their grief. They planted trees to mark a new beginning. They planted trees to also mark a place where the story will be told to the next generation. A member of the family who participated in the program in Mangina said this: living on this earth we all have any end. The sessions have helped me a lot. My first time I have felt comforted is here. These sessions have helped me. You have done a good thing to bring us these sessions. Another family said, from this tree, we will tell our girls and boys what happened in Mangina. But Bethesda did not only serve the families that were grieving the loss of their loved ones. We also served the Ebola survivors, those who contracted it and they survived it. We invited them in another program. And many of these survivors, as I said at the beginning, faced so many problems. In February of 2020, I traveled to Liberia, West Africa, to learn ways that local communities there cope with life after facing the terrible Ebola outbreak. And I had the privilege in Liberia to meet with Ebola survivors who shared their stories with me. I discovered that their stories in Liberia are the same stories of survivors from Congo. Stories that involved rejection, discrimination, and shame. In Beni, an Ebola survivor told the Bethesda team, I don't want people to call me healed, because if I was healed, why are they afraid of me? This means they lied to us. Even at the hospital, sometimes we can see the nurses are afraid of us. Nurses are those who declare that we were healed. Why are they afraid of us? Another survivor said, when people in my neighborhood see me coming to fetch water, and this is so painful, this is what she continues saying, those people will leave the well because they see me coming. They're afraid of me. She finished her story by saying, dying is better for me because those who died don't know what we are dealing with here. As I said earlier, some women who survived this terrible disease were chased away from their home, and therefore families were destroyed. So in our program, survivors also participated in a livelihood program for economic empowerment. And Dr. Leslie talked about Wakisha, a program that she has been so much participating in and supporting a lot. This program actually provided a training to Bethesda staff to help families, vulnerable families, to learn ways they can initiate some small business. And these were our participants. These were our clients that we were helping. So we came in with the approach that the Wakisha brought us, and we provided these families with a special training about how to start a small business and to empower them again economically so they can move on with life. The Bethesda team, this is what one of the participants said. The Bethesda team invited us and they welcomed us and embraced us. And he said, it is here where I realized that I'm still a human. It is here where I realize that I'm still a human. Let's take a short break and listen to this, follow this story from this video. And I will ask all of us to watch this video with our heart. And Dr. Leslie, back to you, and I will be back soon. Thank you.
Yes, let me share my screen and start the video for everyone.
Njo magonjwa yalikuja. Kama kesi sikuwa na kazi, nikaingia kutumia kwa ile nini ya riposte, komite ya riposte. Na kwa ile komite ya riposte nikatumika mpilia EDS. Na maanisha anterema digne et sécurisé. Haikuwa facile.
Wakati nilikuwa nikiona wagonjwa wanafariki huko kunako CPE, ilikuwa kimletea uchungu sana. Wagonjwa walikuwa wakifika, unasikia apres dakika kidogo wanasema mtu amefariki.
Basi wakati mimi nafikiria leo tena anisikiki mzuri. Sababu na sasa mimi na sabula watu njoo shani acha inaniletea huzuni sana. Sisikii na amani pana. Kisha bwanangu kufariki, kwa dadangu akamfuata vile nyuma. Wa kwanza ilikuwa mamake Magia alikuwa wa kwanza. Kisha dai Ivoni, kabira Manzekele Ivoni, kisha kabua Manzekele Ivoni, kisha kambo Manzekele Ivoni, kwa Katungu, kulikuwa Mpenda, kulikuwa Preference, Mama Bienvenue. Na wengine ni wengi bantu kule. Niseme nini?
Kulikuwa na maiti safasi yote, saa yote kulikuwa na maiti. Kulikuwa watu wanalia. Ilikuwa sumbua kabisa roho.
Nilikuwa daktari muda wa miaka mingi na sionaka hali kama hiyo. Hiyo ilinigusa sana kimafikiri kabisa nilipoona watu wakiteseka wanafariki.
Kwa watu yote ndio kasema walikuwa tika mtu waingie mwenyewe mshitaki mtie. Sasa mnawaambia mshawaexplique procedure yote. Wanakuwa sasa wanakubali. Msamu utaingia mnyumba, unatia msaki mortier viti na njia pale.
Wafanyakazi wa riposte hawakuheshimisha kwanza maziko ya mtu. Mtu alikuwa anatupiwa na kama atakufa saa leo anaenda zikuwa kesho na 17h mwe banda zika mtu usiku.
Mara mingi pange kulikuwa problem mwedes. Mara yangu ya kwanza kwenda mtere, fasi ya kuingia si tulipigwa na majio. Mara yangu ya pili tukenda Ndindi, wakauza nini essence, mwezi watulunguze na gari. Sisi na gari sio watatulunguza. Nikataka acha. Nikaangalia hata niache. Nafanya nini? Nikiendelea tu.
Wakati wa Ebola watu walikuwa wanatuogopa. First wanakuwa na shida. Juu ilikuwa si njoo tulikuwa nahangaika tuko. Sirtu mimi nilikuwa nahangaika kwenye magumu ile. Huyu anakufuga tu wangu, huyu anakufuga tu wangu. Kwa bidii nifike tu pale. Abanje tushata kidogo sema unaona njoo pale, njoo fanyie mwenyewe hili. Tulikuwa sio tunakuazika huzuni hii haitaisha.
Wakati walisikia kusema nimepona hii magonjwa waliniogopa sana. Walinihepuka kabisa, wengine wakanikimbia sema hapana, huyo amepona magonjwa ya Ebola atatuambukiza, atacha sisi vile tunagonjwa hii magonjwa. Wanawake wengi wakati walipona hii magonjwa wabwanabo wakawakimbia. Na mpaka leo kuna mimi najua wanamke fulani ambao mpaka leo wabwana wao wameenda kabisa.
Hata sasa tu wengine wangali na ile kusema zile maparole. Si nyinyi mlipata franka au Ebola. Nataka sema nitatuambia nini leo mko wapi? Wala tuwezi kupatia kazi, upataka franka upatie Ebola. Tuwezi kupatia kitu.
Hii barua ya kuagana niliandika sisi niliandika kwa mume wangu wakisi aliendaka ananiachia watoto wananisumbua. Watoto leo biko nahangaika juu habana msingi, habana mtu mwenye anaweza kuwashauria. Kuna niko na mdogo kwanza alikuwa nakosa na kumsomesha masomo. Wanajua alishakuwa sasa anakuwa na akili leo habana kuwashauria. Biko na tangatanga. Sasa mimi nakisidia anabananiza na watu wanaendelea na kuhangaika. Ndio maana mpaka leo siku na tushia kama kitu macho. Tushia kabisa ya maneno.
Centre Bethesda ilitusaidia sisi kabisa tusaidia. Inaomba saidia na wengine ili waweze kupitia ile difficulty walipitia waweze kuzitraverse.
Bethesda ilikuwa kutusaidia sana. Ndio ilikuwa tufariji kwa maneno na kwa matendo. Kwani ilituletea chakula. Nyuma ya pale katufundisha pia namna ya kufanya kazi, katuletea msaada. Hivi tunafanya kazi na ile mpaka leo kunaendelea kutusaidia. Tunaishi kwa sababu sasa mtu analikuta roho na kuwa na amani. Mesa una kitu na kwa tu kufadhaika na kunungunika na kulomba. Mimi kabisa leo kabisa tunaona tulia vraiment.
Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much. And asante mama, asante ndugu Tishike, asante Dr. Maurice kwa kutuletea hadithi hizo. Nadhani kila mtu amepima kupata hiyo hadithi na ameisikia uchungu na kuona kwamba yote tulipitia. Haikuwa uza rahisi. We thank the team, we thank Tishike and mama and all of what they went through and celebrate their resilience. And you can see in all that Bethesda Counseling Center did, people felt understood by us, that they felt respected and safe. Their grief mattered to us. We honor them and their losses. Families began to trust us. We are part of them. We speak the same language. This is our community. It was our community that was affected. So their grief was our grief as well. And it was personal, very personal. In total, Bethesda Counseling Center worked with 200 grieving families, including 176 Ebola survivors and more than 600 children. So in conclusion, friends, we strongly believe international humanitarian and relief communities, social sciences and research groups and donors should not underestimate the unique ability of existing local professional services such as Bethesda Counseling Center and others that already exist there to connect to those in crisis. These local programs may have a unique contextual voice to bring to the table of our collective effort to serve and rebuild communities after crisis. So let's work together. I started my presentation with the story of Gregoire. I told you that Gregoire lost his wife and youngest daughter due to the virus. After all the service he received at Bethesda Counseling Center, Gregoire started to become more resilient. He said, "Since I started participating in counseling service here at Bethesda, I have seen a new person born in me. I've regained courage and strength. I've used the financial support I received through Bethesda's livelihood program to start a small business." And in October of last year, Gregoire got remarried to his beautiful wife. I'm trying to find the picture he sent me. This is this picture. Him and Janine, his wife, invited Bethesda team to celebrate their new beginning of love, stability, and hope. And we all witnessed a new Gregoire. Thank you very much for listening as we all also trust and hope for a better future for these survivors, their families, the communities, and for Congo and the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noe, for sharing your story and the story of so many of your friends and community members there in Beni. Also, sincere thanks to Mama Marie-Jean, Mr. Taishike, and Dr. Maurice. And I can see everyone is there now. You can see it's becoming dark there in Congo. You know, time change is happening. But we want to open up the session for questions. For anyone that would like to ask a question, please feel free to put that in the chat. We have plenty of translators, so we can get it to any language that it needs to go to. But one of the questions that I wanted to sort of start out with is, you know, this is such an emotional thing to share these stories. And I'm wondering what lessons learned that our panelists can share with us about how we can look forward and what gives you inspiration, what gives you the way to look forward. And Noe, I'll give it to you first, and then we can share it with our friends in Congo.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think there is hope in suffering, because in our suffering, actually, we gain more, and we build a sense of community and depending on one another. And the hope that actually our community is our security. And that's what it is in Beni. The community is strong, and that's where we hope that it will not be destroyed, because the community bears the purpose and the meaning of life for us there. And that's hope that we have, is these people who have experienced so much pain and suffering have yet learned a lot and have grown a lot. And I think that's beautiful, and we look forward for in future, and we know we will overcome this, because nothing can tear us apart as a community. And I hope that for myself, for my team, and for the families there. And I think I'll be happy to hear from maybe anybody there. Kama kunakuwa kitu yenyewe inakuletea tatumaini ndani ya hii yote, sijui kama unakuwa na tumaini gani mama. Inaweza kuwa tumaini yako inakupatia tumaini hata kama hivi tumepitia hii yote.
Yenyewe anipatia tumaini ni mafundisho kwanza. Mafundisho ni mazuri sana na nijenga. Na mimi nashukuru sana kwa mafundisho mingi yenyewe mnaleta.
What gives me hope is, Sele, can you be closer so you can help? It may be easier to avoid the echo. Thank you. Asante mama, ndiyo.
Wakati walitupelekea kufundisha Masimbembe, tulifurahi sana kwani tulikuwa tushahuzunika, tulishavunjika moyo. Mafundisho yenyewe tulipata Masimbembe ilitutuliza, nikatupatia tumaini ya kuishi, sababu tulikuwa delesea, hatukuwa na mtu alitushughulikia, lakini mafundisho hii tusaidia sana, tulishukuru na tulitulie. Hata mpaka leo tutaendelea na kushukuru hii kundi yetu yenyewe tuko leo hii ya kasi lingi. Na kwani wanatumia kimwili vile kiroho, ni shukrani kubwa kabisa yenyewe tuko nayo.
We got new hope when the Bethesda team came to Masimbembe to teach us, and we were really very glad that they helped us both spiritually and also contributing to our daily lives. So we are really thankful that there is new hope for a better future.
Asante mama. Dr. Maurice.
Kuna kwa vile wengine wa ndugu wetu wa mama vile wanateseka, ni hawakupata vile mafundisho hii.
So Mama is adding that there are other friends of theirs who are suffering and they were not lucky to get the teachings that Bethesda came to share with us in Masimbembe. So they may also need the kind of teachings that Bethesda brought to Masimbembe.
Asante mama. Dr. Maurice, quelque chose à ajouter?
Sema watu wote ambao walishikwa na hii ya Ebola, na zaidi sana familia vile ambazo zilishikwa na hii magonjwa, wote wanashukuru, kwani namna ya kutunja hii magonjwa inapishana na namna wagonjwa wanatunjwa hospitalini. Wakati watu wanatunjwa, wanasaidiwa kimafikiri na wapsikologi. Hii presence ya wapsikologi inasaidia watu wengi sana, na inapatia watu tumaini ya kuendelea kuishi.
Merci. Sele?
So when there is a treatment, it helps and it gives new hope for new life. And also the presence of psychologists and counselors here at Bethesda is really a great solution that we think should continue.
Thank you. I don't know, Dr. Leslie, if you have anything else to add.
I didn't know, maybe Taishike, would be fun to hear from him. One of the questions we received is there less stigma now around Ebola survivors, and for his work that he was involved with? Has the stigma reduced?
Ndio.
Ndio ile kudharauliwa msositisha punguka kwanza tuna kupunguka. Depuis ndofia Bethesda mafasirio ya Bethesda na maexercice zinatuma kupunguza.
With the support that we are getting from Bethesda, stigma is really decreasing and we are thankful.
And I think I see now Taishike has a job as a mason in Bennytown. So how is that going?
Kazi nishapata kwanza ni masutu niko nila kutumika me hakusa zamani kujua anasema bakwa sema tutabaonea kwa wakati ya fair repost.
So the new job that he has is okay, but it's not the way it was before he was sick. And there were people even telling them bad words, saying, okay, we will see what will happen to you when Ebola is over. And then, yeah, stigma is still kind of there because of such things. But Bethesda has done its part trying to continue to support us and to assist.
Thank you so much. Good luck with everything, Taishike. So we have another question from the audience. They're saying, thank you again for speaking with us today. We're excited to make the connection to everyone in Congo. This person is wondering if you were concerned about the COVID-19 pandemic and whether or not it's a daily concern in your lives in Congo. Maybe we'll go to Dr. Maurice first, since he's the medical doctor dealing with some of the medical concerns.
Ndiyo, shukurani kwa swali. Huku ndani ya Jamhuri ya Kidemokrasia ya Kongo, watu wanasikia kwamba COVID-19 inaendelea kutesa watu, na kweli imemaliza watu wengi huko Ulaya na Amerika. Lakini tunakuwa na kaneema kidogo huko katika nchi yetu ya Kongo, kwani hii magonjwa kweli imewashika watu, lakini watu hawafariki sana. Ndiyo maana wakuu wa serikali na sisi wanganga tunaendelea kujulisha watu ya kwamba waendelee kushika yote ambao waganga watasema, ili tuweze na watu wanakuwa na tumaini ya kwamba wakashika yote ambao waganga wanaendelea kusema, hii magonjwa haitatesa watu sana.
Yes, there are cases of COVID in Congo, and the case of, the number of the deceased is really decreased, and the government and the medical team are continuing to ask the population to respect the different measures in order to come to the eradication of COVID before it is intense in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Thank you very much. We have another question. This one is from a Congolese student studying here at Texas A&M, and he wants to thanks so much to Noe for sharing this touching and inspiring story, and thanks to your strong team in Beni, everyone in Beni. He's talking about the new Ebola outbreak that has just been declared. And he's asking, what are the major factors behind that outbreak and what can be done to avoid the impacts to negatively affect the population that's already suffering due to lack of peace? Maybe Noe, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I forgot your name, but thank you again for your word of encouragement. And we're happy for your studies here. We are observing carefully how this case will continue. But I think, you know, the government and the World Health Organization and all other partners are now forming this core response a strategy to contain the virus. And we hope what they are putting in place will really provide a very strong positive outcome to contain it very quickly, because if they don't contain this quickly, the insecurity has not been contained, that again will be a factor to completely disturb this outcome. And we know that, and they know that, and as I said here, it's clear that it's a very critical path to fight Ebola in such an insecure, unstable place. So they should really move on very fast, very quickly. And especially the main pillar is community engagement. Even though people have experienced Ebola before, they have learned it's not enough. They should continue to really go there and engage the community and welcome them. I think also from their side of things as the leaders, they did some bad things. I think they should also learn from their mistakes of the past. So, and maybe find a good way to engage with people with love, compassion, and care. All that these mama and others we all need is this. It's just love, compassion, care. Don't come with such an authority toward people who are grieving. I think that would be good, that I'm sure we trust that they have learned from these mistakes and that this will also be part of their new strategies. Dr. Maurice, I don't know if there's something you can add on this question. How are we going to contain, how you see the Ebola being contained as soon as possible?
Oui, est-ce que bon, problème micro?
On vous attend, Allez-y.
Tunasema hii magonjwa ambayo imeanza tena katika nchi yetu ya Jamhuri ya Kidemokrasia ya Kongo, wakaaji na waganga wakaungana mkono na ekipe ya riposti, hii magonjwa itaisha mbio. Kuisha mbio inafaa kwanza wakaaji wote wasikilizane na waganga ili magonjwa hii iweze kaisha. Haiko tu wakaaji peke, na kunakuwa vile waganga wa vituo vya afya vingine ambao wanaficha wagonjwa, na itafaa vile wale waganga wasiendelee kuficha wagonjwa, wajikaze ili kukakuwa mgonjwa ambaye anaonesha alama ya hii magonjwa ya Ebola wajulishe ekipe za riposte mbele ya wakati ili magonjwa iweze kuisha. Ni hii kifupi ambao nitasema.
So briefly, I would like to say that this requires unity. If the population, the medical teams here and there work together and with the government, I think this new wave of Ebola can finish before it causes so many disasters. So that's what can be said briefly. And also, if the different medical teams decide not to hide the sick people, we think that something good can come out of the efforts that the population, the medical teams, and the government try to make.
Thank you very much for that. We're getting down to end of time, and we have like two basic questions that people are asking. That are, one is a follow-up to what we were just talking about, preventive measures. There's questions about the Ebola vaccine. And yes, we know there is an Ebola vaccine, and people are wondering if there is a resistance to people taking the vaccine, and what lessons learned that will help communicate to communities around the world who are worried about the COVID-19 vaccines.
Yeah, I think there's always two groups, you know, that two forces when it comes to vaccine across the globe. And the same thing that happened in Congo, you know, the beginning of the outbreak, mixed messages, you know, came in social media. You shouldn't take a vaccine. You know. I think it was just based on the fear and you know that people had. You know, in that can be linked to many other facts, many other historical problems. But anyway, it took the Ebola response a little bit of time to really disseminate positive messages around the vaccine, disseminating positive messages involving community leaders and church leaders, religious leaders, women and mothers who have strong voices in the community. They got there also. I wish they could do it sooner, but it was a little late, but they did it. So it worked well when they really engage everyone and people start getting the vaccine. I think it was just a process, and then it was okay. People got vaccinated. Many people got vaccinated. Well, did that remove the fear? I would say no. There are still people who are still afraid of the vaccine, who even hid up to now. And but my team, Bethesda Counseling Center team, I think 99% of my team got vaccinated because we were working with the Ebola survivors. We're working out there with in a very critical situation. So my team took it as our measure to protect ourselves. So it's a very, very, I would say it's a choice between life and death. You choose it, and to know you protect yourself, to protect others. Dr. Maurice, is there any other thing that you see about, the fear of the vaccine around the Ebola up to now in Beni and Butembo?
Ndio, kuhusu vaccine tunajua kwamba wakati watu walisema kwamba watu wapate vaccine zamani, wakati wa 10e epidemia, wengine walikuwa wakikatala vaccine kusema ya kwamba itawaharibisha mwili, lakini kisha siku mingi walielewa ya kwamba hii vaccine haina shida hata moja, kwani watu wote ambao walipata vaccine wanaendelea wakiishi mzuri. Nami vile mtoto wangu wakati niligonjwa magonjwa ya Ebola, mtoto wangu alipata vaccine na kwa sasa hayaonesha alama mbaya kabisa. Ile inaonyesha ya kwamba vaccine haina shida kidogo hata kidogo. Watu tutaambia tu watu ya kwamba wakubali kupata vaccine ili hii magonjwa isiwamalize watu sana kabisa.
During the 10th epidemic, people were at the beginning reluctant to the vaccine, but with time, after so many disasters, people ended up accepting the vaccine. And then now we are encouraging people to accept the vaccine because it's not that dangerous. And even when I was sick with Ebola, my child took the vaccine and up to now he's still strong. So I think the vaccine has no problem, and we will continue to encourage people to accept it so that all these disasters may be avoided.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much to all our panelists in Congo. We know it's late at night. there for you, and we are so appreciative of you taking the time to share your stories and be so open with us here on this panel. We wish you all the very best successes. And we also thank everyone that has tuned in to say hello to us. And the IT team, they're giving us a view of the room. We say hello to them. We thank everyone then. And of course, my sincere gratitude to my friend Noe Kasali for pulling this all together for us. Coordinating between the US and Congo is not easy, especially when tech is involved. So hey, great job, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I look forward to seeing you all again in Congo when I can come travel again. Thanks again to everyone. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Brittany. And I hope everyone has the chance to tune in to the rest of the conference. Jessica.
Thank you again. Thank you to our panelists and our participants. And yes, I'll just reiterate what Leslie has said. Please feel free to join us for our next panel, which begins at 11:45, and you should have the link when you registered. So thanks again, and we hope to continue the conversation through future collaborations and conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.